my brain has just been obsessed with thinking about my story, which has been very, very helpful because it's helped me step back, see my story as a whole. And one of the things that I'm finding and that just came to my brain right now is I really need to commit to an angle. So the local library that is a few blocks from my place or is in my neighborhood was totally closed down. We moved here and I remember being so sad, but it just opened yesterday. And so I went today, I got my library card and I checked out my first book. And I just sat there and did some editing homework. And so I checked out The Fault in Our Stars because it's one of the most popular books written for kids ages 15 through 18. And one of the things that I really want to think about as I'm writing this and editing this draft is the voice at which my character uses to make sure she still sounds like she is in that 15 to 18 range, make sure she sounds like me. This character, the main character here, does not sound like my character at all. She's too witty, confident, intellectual, but I love still there's so many things that I can take from this. So I just kind of sat and read and took some notes about things that I liked, how ideas from this can transcribe and how would they show up in my story, et cetera, et cetera. And I really loved sitting in this little library. I just camped out at a table and there were just kids around me reading and it felt like a really good vibe. It might be a place that would be really great for me to go back to, but I absolutely loved being there and could see myself doing that again. Also, it's free and I didn't want another coffee today, so I didn't have to buy another coffee. I just took my water bottle, but I also don't know. I hope they have a public restroom because I have to pee, so I'm going home. I didn't even ask, but I was going home anyways, but super loved it. Super happy for me. Love this for me. I can see why Shelly said to take some time off. I'm walking to work and I just find that my brain has just been obsessed with thinking about my story, which has been very, very helpful because it's helped me, this time away has helped me step back, see my story as a whole. I'm so glad that I've read it. I'm so glad I've read that first chapter to a couple of people. And I love that I started reading A Fault in My Stars yesterday, that I read this book about Judy Blume and her books, that I've started to peek into a Judy Blume book, that I'm having these books as inspiration with Percy Jackson and The Hunger Games. And one of the things that I'm finding and that just came to my brain right now is I really need to commit to an angle. Because right now, I'm calling my book a dystopian fantasy, but it's leaning dystopian because I can't decide between that. In The Hunger Games, Katniss lives in a dystopian world. In Percy Jackson, he lives in the regular world, then moves into a magical world. And it's I'm doing a blend of the two, and I have to really commit to which one it is. And so I'm really thinking that's also what's stopping me from having super clear voice of characters, because how are they thinking? And I can see how one of the things that I'm doing with the voice of my character is, and I thought about this morning after reading A Fault in My Stars, or Our Stars, or whatever it's called, but is that I can see where I'm putting some of my learned reflective thoughts on my character wouldn't be having those then. You know what I mean? Like when I was a 16-year-old teenage girl, I was not thinking like all these even thoughts. There was probably a lot of like straightforward into myself, thinking I know the answers types of things. And so I'm seeing that that's something that I need to add in, but it's like, okay, but in order to have some of that, I need to have those opinions about the world around me, which means I need to know, am I in a dystopian world or the regular world, for how to do that. So that's something I'm going to keep rolling around in my head. Like, which way do I want it to go? Do I want it to be pegged, super relevant, super I see myself exactly, or do I want it to be this kind of fantastical thing that kids can see themselves in, but isn't on the nose, feels like their neighborhood? So far, editing has not been at all what I expected it to be. If you guys have been around for a while, you know that for a while I was afraid of the editing process because I was like, it's going to be so big and it's going to be so heavy and it's going to be so important. And then I was like, oh, I have nothing to be afraid of. It's going to be awesome. Not that I need to be afraid, but it is so big, so heavy, and so important. But I found it to be so fun because what I didn't imagine is that editing, starting this process, is basically like the whole brainstorming process all over again. Like, I thought that it was going to be like drafting, and then you draft again, and then you draft again, and then you draft again. But I took a couple weeks away from my book as instructed by another editor who does like creative nonfiction. And it had helped me just like start to be in that place of coming up with ideas. And I've been doing research, as you guys saw, of like reading different books and things that have given me so many ideas of ways that I can deepen everything. So I feel like instead of just drafting and drafting and drafting again, I've really been able to redo the brainstorming process, which has been so much fun. And so over the last like week and a half or so of the videos that you've seen, I've just been in my head, coming up with ideas, thinking about it while I'm walking to work, thinking about it while I'm actively working on it. But I've been, even though I have my laptop with me every single time, I haven't really been in my laptop at all. I've been working in my big fat ass notebook that holds all of my ideas since the very beginning about this series that I want to write. And so in that last clip that you saw, I went to St. Hardin, one of my favorite cafes in the city. And I went through all my notes about book one, and I just started highlighting things of saying like, oh, this has become really important. This is something I'm going to be using. This is something I need to change. Here's something, oh, I forgot that I wrote this down. I need to add this in and add these different places and things like that. So I went and started highlighting everything that felt really important. And then, as you saw at the very end of that, I was able to make this list of things that I need to decide based on all my old notes and the first draft that I have, and then this whole editing to do of things that I need to do. And so today, what I'm hoping I can do is like sit, look at this list and still expand on this. But one thing that I want to do is when I think about the whole brainstorming thing, something that helped me a lot was not just the events and things that I wanted to add to my story, but like what order they went in. I've talked a lot about taking artistic liberties to the things that have happened in my life, as this fantasy series is based on my memoir, right? My life. And so I've taken those things, and even though this first book that I'm writing, there's a lot of events in it that span from like seventh, eighth grade, all the way through senior year in high school. And I'm like condensing them into one timeline for her, like less than a year for her, or about a year for her of like learning and growing. Right. And so I feel like as I've gone through this and as I've been reading books and as I've been doing this brainstorming again, there are more events. There's more like minute things. It was almost like the first brainstorming and first draft was all the big rocks. Like if you were to just drop rocks down, you know, these boulders would be next to each other. And now I feel like what I'm doing is brainstorming all of the small sand and thing that's going to fill in all of those big events, all of the, things that add even more depth of character, things that add even more voice, things that add just like things that make your like heart pull a little bit. When I think about the tertiary characters, about making them stronger, making them more meaningful. Like, why do we love or dislike my sister character? Why do we love or dislike my mother character? Why do we love or dislike a friend, or like one of my friend's older brothers? Like there's scenes in there where I'm like, I could make his character just so much more juicy. I don't know the right word, but like deep, like to have more to them. So they're not just someone who's kind of like sitting around. Like when you read Harry Potter, I've been thinking a lot about, okay, what are those characters that we cared about? What are those ones that we don't? And like Uncle Vernon, we never really care about him, but ultimately we end up really having feelings about Aunt Petunia because we start to see why she is the way she is. We start to see why she hated Lily so much, because it was really her not feeling enough, really her not feeling seen. And we start to feel those stories. We start to feel for her. Not that we ever like her, but we see that depth. And like the same thing with like Dudley. You hate him for so long because he's such an asshole. But like by the very end of the books, you're like, oh, wait, there's a couple things like after like book 6, I think you start to be like, oh, Dudley. Right? You start to like have those thoughts. So I want to start putting some of those things in now. I want my characters to matter now so that I have feelings for them. And one of the things I've been thinking about are what are their stories? And that's something that I have to kind of hash out is like, okay, what are each of their storylines? What are they doing? So that's something that I want to kind of look into. And then I made a list of all of the themes. And this was something that was recommended to me as well, is I kind of wrote down what are all the themes that my book even hits. So like classism, social divide, self-worth and identity, family friendship, there's a little bit of loss, grief, system neglect, like how the system fails those in poverty, power and control, resilience and survival, agency and choice, your found family, hope and optimism and belief, and then just like the power of emotion. And so I've kind of gone through and starred the ones that I want to focus on. And then for every current chapter that I have, there's only 23 chapters now. I don't know if that'll stay, if the chapters will get longer or more will be added in. I'm thinking when I'm adding in the sand, like if I have that visual, that's such a good visual for me, that there might end up being more chapters. But so I have the chapters kind of out now. And what I want to kind of sit and do is look at these chapters and say, what do I add where? Like what stories do I add when I'm thinking about, in my editing to-do list of having one of the characters offer me a hand-me-down item? Like where does that come into the story? Changing and like adding something where how I used to steal stuff as a kid, like where does that come into the story? And so I want to start kind of adding these around and see how they add those sand pieces in. So that's what I'm working on today. And then I'm hopeful that on Thursday, I have to find a new cafe because St. Herdim doesn't allow laptops. I was thinking about just like messaging the manager and being like, hey, I'm so inspired in your space. I know you don't have laptops, but I'm writing a best-selling series. And like, how cool would it be if people would look back and be like, hey, this is where Kayla wrote her book, and then go visit you? I mean, seriously, how sweet would that be? But I also just feel like a rule is a rule. And there's a place that I found that I'm going to try out. And if it doesn't work, then I'll go back into the city for that. But that's what I'm going to be working on today, is looking at these themes, looking at my to-do list, expanding my to-do list, and then maybe just kind of like writing out different ways things could happen, having different activities. I'm going back to the board with my Post-it notes, and it's almost like my blue Post-it notes are the big rocks, and then I'm going to use a different color to be like the sand that goes in between. Slow start this morning, and I do have meetings this afternoon, so I have to wrap this up, but I feel like I'm in such a good groove and I could just do this part forever. So many different things. So I had this list of things that I needed to decide after going through all of my notes and reading that first draft. Themes like, does my character have a job? Because there's certain things that I want to add in that do have her like having money or like some sort of like sway in using things. And so I am going to give her a job, which means there's going to be a lot of things that I have to edit and kind of talk about. Even in like the opening image, there's a couple lines. I really wanted to clarify the setting. I still have to name the town. I have to name the characters were things that I have to do. I have to hash out, why are there even rich kids in my school and in my neighborhood and things like that. And so I feel like I just did so much for that and I loved it. What I just did is I actually went and I drew out a map of the town. And as I was drawing it, I was just kind of like, for the way that I want to tell the story, and I've found that in the writing of the first draft, there are some locations where this drawing is almost more accurate to the town that I actually lived in. But again, artistic liberties, I decided to draw a new town. I'm like, wait, this layout makes way more sense. One of the things that I'm really excited about as I kind of was thinking about why are the rich people in this town, what I decided is the only people who are wealthy people in this town are the people who are there to run the economy. So in the town that I grew up, there really was a paper mill that my dad worked at, and it was like you could smell the paper mill at all times. And there was also a big wood mill. And so basically what I've created, the setting of this town, is that the paper mill and wood mill is like what everybody works in. That's what all of the people who are like struck down by the withering and held by the withering work in these places. That's where they work the long hours and all of these things. And so one of the things was like, okay, the kids in the school, like, why are there rich kids in the school? Because I wanted to have that kind of like, classism is a big part of what I'm trying to show, is what it's like to be impoverished and be stuck in poverty, and how the system like doesn't help you get unstuck from poverty. So what I decided is that I moved the school and the grocery store right on the line of like 48th Street. It has always been the divide. Like people who lived on that side were more wealthy and the people who lived in my neighborhood were not. Like that is real, that there was a divide in my town that I felt was really visible. And so I put the school and the grocery store right there. And that's where the two classes, like you can see the difference, you can see the division. And I already have these sort of stories in my book where it's like you go to school, you see the kids who are on free lunch, and you see the kids that get to have whatever they want for lunch, right? You go to the grocery store and I have an interaction with this lady who's like impeccably dressed and perfectly clean, which is with everybody working in the mills is not how it is. And so I'm going to kind of create even more visualization to show that these are the places where we overlap and you can really see the difference. And that gives me opportunity to share kind of my thoughts about how I feel about the people on the east side and things like that. So that I feel like that feels really strong. And then I kind of hashed out, okay, so what is this actual neighborhood? And I realized I was kind of making it too expansive. And so with the wood mill and the paper mill, I'm just making it surrounded by forest, which is kind of realistic and kind of not. Like coming from the Pacific Northwest, forest and stuff was everywhere, but I just kind of have closed it in on my map, and I'm really excited about that. Um, and so I feel really, really good about kind of hashing that out. One thing that I have done a couple times, and I did it just now to kind of help me figure out my setting. And what I did is I asked ChatGPT, I said, ChatGPT, I could probably like pull up the prompt and read to you what I asked it, because I actually found it really helpful. Describe in detail to me the setting of District 12 in the Hunger Games where Katniss lives. Describe it in the way that the author probably wrote it out while planning her book. And so it gave me like this layout of geography and location that she was probably thinking about, the economy, the atmosphere, the cultural details, the symbolism. And that helped me be like, okay, even just looking at these, what is the geography and layout? I was largely working on that. But then, okay, what is the economy and survival? Then I was like, oh, well, I've already kind of tapped into the timber mill, things like this. So it gave me a little bit more. In the book, The Hunger Games, if you've read it, which I'm sure you have if you're on the channel, if you haven't, you should read it because it's phenomenal. But they have this place called the Hob, which is like the black market. And I'm like, oh, I don't have a Hob, but I have wrote about a store already called the Mill and Match. And so that's kind of that. And then the whole like Main Street is kind of like the place where all of the people who are, I think I'm going to call them maybe like millborns or something like that. Like very blue collar people, impoverished, not even blue collar, impoverished people. Like the Main Street is going to be like their drag, where their things are, the atmosphere. She like for Hunger Games, they talk about like families can't afford basic goods and the oppression from the capital and things like that. I don't really have oppression from the capital, but there is this like big divide between the wealthy and the haves and the have-nots. The cultural details, this was something that I hadn't really thought about for my community. And one of the things that I think, yeah, there's culture, but I think one of the things that I want to write into here, and I should write this down, is the lack of culture, the lack of community. And that's one of the things for me personally that I have found with poverty is everybody's so strained that they don't have time. They don't have time to like sing, to have community, to be together, to support each other. I'm gonna write this down. Whereas like in the Hunger Games, they had like those songs that were passed down that like Katniss sang, everybody doing like the kiss and the 3 fingers or 2 fingers or whatever it was in that show. I think one of the things that I want to show is that because people are so strange that they're not holding on to all of that. But the one thing that they do have is like a toughness that's passed down, and sometimes to a hard degree, which we'll find in my second book when my dad is more of a main character, or the dad is more of a main character, and how tough you can be and how abuse is like often a big part of poverty because of this like need for toughness and stuff. And then the symbolism, like I already have symbolism of the line that divides, the divide there, some of the other things. So, but it was really cool to see, okay, how would Suzanne Collins maybe do this? That helped me be like, okay, what else should I be thinking about? So I've really loved using ChatGPT in that way of like, what else do I need to be thinking about? What can like wiggle around my brain? What can I noodle on to help me make this even deeper? And I feel so successful about doing that today. And so I've gone through in the setting and made some updates there that I'm really excited about. And even just kind of thinking through the settings in those different pieces helps me see, oh, kind of what I was talking about before. I can make my characters stronger when I could talk about like going like, one of the things I talk about is my mom being an alcoholic, but I'm like, oh, so many other people should be too. So I need a bar, right? Or even one of the things could be like a post office or an outlet store because my character needs to go buy some things. And so, and one of the things I was even talking about is to show her poverty. I was kind of journaling earlier this week of what do you do when you are impoverished? You hoard stuff. So I'm going to talk about like notebooks and saving notebooks when they only have like 2 pages left because I couldn't throw it away because there's 2 pieces of paper. Like that's stuff I still do now. And I can see where in writing this book, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of like poverty habits I still have, but also I'm not wasting 2 good pieces of paper. But there's going to be a part that I wanted to write in where my character, and admittedly, I used to do this all the time. I didn't have enough money to buy things, but I did have some money. So I would go to a store and I would steal stuff, like honestly and truthfully. but I would also buy a thing. So it's like I want to add that in because my character still bought something because she didn't want to not buy things. Because she felt bad, but also she needed or wanted other things to either fit in, or in this case, it's going to be for a project at school. And so I want to have her go to like a paper outlet or something like that. And in real life, it was a scrapbooking store, the example I'm thinking of. I used to steal so many scrapbooking supplies. In high school, my dance team used to do scrapbooks. Like you would have a scrapbook partner that you would take pictures of like secretly all year, and then at the end of the year you'd make her a scrapbook of her year. And it's like, scrapbook supplies were expensive in high school, y'all. Please don't send me to jail. I feel bad admitting that to the world, but whatever. That was a long time ago. It's fine. But she didn't want to have to steal those things, but she's going to maybe like go steal some school supplies for her project and things like that, but still be able to buy something, which is why I had to give her a job. So she's going to start working at the mill and the match. And the mill and match is going to be kind of like that place where people get together and grumble and complain, and you're going to start to hear people talk again about the divide of the haves and the have-nots. So I'm really excited just again about like that visual of all the rocks are in place, and now I get to add the sand and like fill in the story. And I really wish I had more time, but I have to make my lunch, prep for a meeting, and then start a meeting in 1 hour. One thing I will say is this weekend we went away with some friends and we went to a little wine bar. And I was talking to them about how difficult it's been to name the characters of my book and to think of anything, especially because some of the characters are based on real people with real names, kind of like in the Gilded Age, right? They use real names. But we sat and literally looked at wine bottles and stuff and just made up names together. And I actually love a lot of them. So one of the characters, I'm changing her name to be Beale, which I really love. Beale Smith is going to be her name. I love the name Lane is going to be one of the guys' names. Eden is going to be a name that comes in the end of the chapter. Val is going to be Beale's mom's name. I love the name Margot with an AUX at the end. And that'll probably be something that comes in maybe even book 2. There was a wine called Paytar. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but I'm like, that sounds cool. So it was really fun to do that. I like the name Aster. I think I'm going to use for someone. But it was really fun. But I have all these on a Post-it. So that I'm going to start incorporating. One thing I'm thinking about right now is I want to start writing. This on Thursday is my hope. Today's Monday. And I'll definitely come back and show you that. But it's like, do I feel like I need to still be planning and going this in depth? Like maybe what I did for the setting today, I need to start doing for the characters first. So Thursday, I'll do a character deep dive. And then Friday, I will write because I also have a pretty open schedule on Friday. Got to be amazing to have 3 days with book work. What I don't want to do is get in that idea of like brainstorming, and not actually getting to the writing portion, because I do want to make sure I get these ideas down. So I think I'm going to, do that on Thursday. I'll do a deep dive on characters, and then Friday I'll start writing this next draft, with my second full draft of Almost Judy, my working project that's going to become a best-selling series. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to see how I continue to brainstorm and edit for this series that's coming, then click subscribe, stick around. Cannot wait to share with you more on Thursday about how I do this exact same process, but for characters. I'm so super pumped for that.